Today's program, Paul Demain. Many of the stories read here can be found at our website as well at IndianCountryNews.com. Here's the news stories for the day from the Associated Press and other native news sources. Yesterday I pronounced a tribal name wrong. It is Mattapani, not Mattapani. So it's the Mattapani tribe there in Virginia. Jurors are entitled to hear evidence that one of two men charged with killing a woman in 1975 had a gun in his possession earlier that year, similar to the murder weapon, prosecutors have argued. John Graham and Richard Marshall pled not guilty to charges they committed or aided and abetted the murder of Anna Mae Aquash on the Pine Ridge Reservation when they were all active with the American Indian Movement in 1975. Graham and Marshall are scheduled to stand trial starting May 12th in Rapid City, South Dakota. Prosecutors earlier asked the judge to allow evidence that the .32 caliber pistol used to kill Aquash could have been the same one seized when Marshall was arrested for the Montaloo murder. But Marshall's attorney, Dana Haina, argued that his client couldn't have had the gun when the Aquash was killed because it was placed in police custody in March of 1975 and offered as evidence at Marshall's April 1976 trial. Jackley argued that the .32 caliber pistol was found on the same side of the car as Marshall exited. The Montaloo and Aquash killings were similar in that both were shot in the head and the neck area, and there's no record that the .32 caliber gun tested or entered as evidence in Marshall's was tested or entered as evidence in Marshall's trial. Havre, Montana man Kim Norquay Jr. has been sentenced to 65 years for murder and tampering with physical evidence in the 2006 death of a North Dakota man. 32-year-old Norquay was convicted last November in the death of Lloyd Kevelstead of Minot, North Dakota on November 24, 2006. According to court records, 37-year-old Kevelstead and James Main Jr. got into a fight about Christopher Columbus and the American Indian Movement during a party in Havre. Officers responding to a reported death found Kevelstead's body. An autopsy determined that he had been beaten and strangled. The sentence imposed April 3rd was 15 years more than the prosecution requested. A U.S. Supreme Court will not hear the appeal of a woman who ran a drug ring out of a house in Pine Ridge, South Dakota that was donated to her after a 1999 visit by former President Bill Clinton. Geraldine Bluebird, 53, was sentenced in April 2007 to 34 years in federal prison for conspiracy to distribute cocaine, possession with intent to distribute cocaine, possession of a firearm in relation to drug trafficking, and conspiracy to distribute marijuana. She was found guilty of hosting a conspiracy that trafficked in an estimated $2 million worth of cocaine from Denver to Nebraska and South Dakota over 3 years, according to the prosecutors. The 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the case. The Supreme Court late last month denied Bluebird's petition, which means the justices won't hear the case. 28 people, including family members, were indicted in the investigation. Eventually, 23 pled guilty to conspiracy to distribute a controlled substance or related charges. Bluebird and 4 others were convicted at trial, and she received the longest sentence. The Well Variety Journey for Forgiveness begins on May 16, 2009 in Salem, Oregon, and concludes on June 24th in Washington, D.C. Presentations about Native American historical trauma related to the boarding school era will take place at 23 historic boarding school sites on the 40-day journey cross-country in the United States. White Bison Incorporated is also offering day-long workshops on historical and boarding school trauma at 13 locations across the country. 6 of those are coming up on April 18th prior to the start of the cross-country event. Workshops will take place in the following cities on Saturday, April 18th. Kansas City, Kansas, Rapid City, South Dakota, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Oneida, Wisconsin, and Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Workshops will be facilitated by Native Americans with expertise in healing from the intergenerational trauma, historic trauma, and multi-generational grief in an indigenous cultural framework. More information about the workshops and online registration is available at www.whitebison.org. On Saturday, April 11th, 7 musical acts will perform a benefit concert for the Buffalo Field Campaign, a West Yellowstone-based Front Lines Wild Bison advocacy group that works in defense of America's last wild bison, the Yellowstone population. The benefit is being co-sponsored by Buffalo Allies of Bozeman, a local group of concerned citizens who aims to help wild buffalo and those who work in their defense. The event will take place from 4 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. at the Poor House at 15 North Rouse Avenue in Bozeman, Montana, and features the music of 10 Foot Tall and 80 Proof, Jawbone Railroad, the Bridger Creek Boys, Thermal Grass, Comstock Load, Greg Keeler, and Billy. There is no cover charge, but donations are welcome. There will be speakers from the Buffalo Field Campaign, Buffalo Allies of Bozeman, and Natural Resource Defense Council. A silent auction featuring local items will also be held. World-renowned musician and United Nations Ambassador of Youth for the Environment, Robbie Romero, will perform at a private event on April 22nd on Earth Day at the Indigenous Peoples Global Summit on Climate Change in Anchorage, Alaska. His performance, the first Global Indigenous Earth Day event, will begin at 8:30 p.m. at the Dena'ina Convention Center. Romero's appearance will kick off his 2009 Native Rock Concert Series. Romero's Anchorage appearance is sponsored by the Native Children's Survival, a nonprofit organization that he founded in 1989. Hosted by the Inuit Circumpolar Council, an international organization representing 155,000 Inuit of Alaska, Canada, Greenland, and Russia, the Indigenous Peoples Global Summit on Climate Change is taking place April 20th through the 24th. You can get more information on that at indigenousummit.com. A number of international dignitaries are expected to attend the summit, including Bolivian President Evo Morales, President of the UN General Assembly Miguel Diaz-Canel, the Danish Parliament member Julian Henningsen, and Victoria Tale Corpuz, chair of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues and founder and executive director of the Tebtiba Foundation, or the Indigenous Peoples International Center for Policy, Research, and Education. For folks in the Conway, Arkansas area on Thursday, April 9th at 7 p.m., Ramson Lomatawama, Hopi jeweler, glass blower, stained glass artist, poet, and traditional style Kachina doll carver from Hotavella, Arizona will be at the Faulkner County Library. This is made possible by the Arkansas Humanities Council and is free. The address of the library is 1900 Taylor Street, Conway, Arkansas. About 50 students at the Polaris K-12 school in Anchorage were in the principal's office recently listening via a speakerphone to the debate in the Alaska House on naming the Alaskan Malamute the state dog. The idea to honor the Malamute, the breed that originated in Alaska, came from a kindergarten student at the school and was taken up as a school project over the last 2 years. Polaris teacher Carol Bartholomew said there is some consternation in the group of 2nd through 5th graders when the discussion veered off the dog's historical importance, which was key to their decision to pick the Malamute. So by the time the House voted 31-6 to designate the big, rugged, thick-coated dog as an official state symbol, they were on the edge of their seats. Bill sponsor Berta Gardner, an Anchorage Democrat, said she hopes the work on the bill will inspire the students to become engaged and active citizens. And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to thank our underwriters for helping with this broadcast and you for joining with us again. Miigwech.